Welcome to Home Care, Doors Open, where we discuss licensing, operations, and scaling your home care business. Whether you're just opening your doors or looking to unlock new doors to growth and success, this podcast is for you. Let's begin.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lucas Carroll here with another episode for our podcast, Home Care Doors Open. We have a great guest today, Chris Trempe, who is the president of SwyftOps. He is here to share some wisdom, knowledge, expertise, guidance for our audience that that's looking to start in the home care space and maybe looking to gain some experience and wisdom. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited today to ask you some questions that I think, a lot of folks that tune into us would be very interested to hear somebody who is a seasoned professional, expert, entrepreneur like yourself to share some of that. And just sort of as a refresh for our audience, we have a lot of folks that are interested in starting a home care agency anywhere across the country and maybe don't have a ton of experience in the healthcare industry and the home care industry, working with vendors and professionals like yourself and kind of how all the pieces go together. And so I'm curious, some of the struggles that when you interact with clients at SwyftOps, what are some of the struggles that you see that startups would face?
Right out of the gate, it's overwhelmed with the various areas that they need to have versus what they can opt into. And what I mean would be, obviously, they need to get their licensing and be ready to go. But in terms of a system, we see a lot of folks that don't know what a system should do for them. That's and then they do a demo and they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what the scheduling should do versus what's kind of the old school way of doing it. How's it going to keep me compliant? How's it going to help me with my various payroll or billing needs? All these different things. And the demo almost becomes a training if you are with the right partner. So you see it there, as well as just the gaps in knowledge towards merchant service products. How are you going to collect your money for private pay? And then if you are going down the road of VA or Medicaid, that whole process is very cumbersome and very difficult, and that's why there's folks like yourselves out there that help them. And then finally, just in terms of what are their options to get started? What would open the doors? What do I need? And you need a system. If you want to do it on paper, that's fine, but you're not going to be able to scale. And then you need to be able to pay your people. So you have to have a payroll provider, because even if software, SwyftOps or one of the competitors says they have a payroll provider, if they say they have it, it's white labeled. It is another company that is white labeled inside of them. But the majority allow for an export or some sort of API integration. And just those three can become overwhelming. So we see a lot of folks struggle out of the gate and start pausing and not know what step to take first. So we take a lot of time trying to walk them through, here's the order you should do these, here's how you should onboard, here's when you should sign with the software. A lot of them just want to hit the ground running. I just want to start recruiting people. And a lot of advice we give them is, that's great, but if you hire someone and you don't have a system in place that you know how to use, you're running backwards already. You don't want to learn the system as you're trying to bring a client in or caregiver. Those are very, very common issues there. And then on top of that, hopefully other softwares aren't trying to push this as we don't either, but training integrations. And when I say training, I don't mean how to use the software. I mean the various vendors out there for caregiver skill training and such. That's something that you have to have income to be able to utilize. And we have integrations with that. But if a startup comes to me and says, what do I need? I'm not going to tell them they need that right out of the gate. That's something you have to build revenue up and have that operating cash to handle. And they have to have a plan of how to train them. Now they're overwhelmed again, right? So a lot of that just kind of needing to take a step back and walk them through how to get to that open door day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to build a foundation there, can you share with our audience just a little bit about what is SwyftOps? Like what sort of vendor, if you're new to the home care space, what sort of vendor category do you serve in, and then what are some of the services that you provide?
So you'll hear us refer to as a scheduling software. That's kind of the old way of quantifying what we do. We are an operating system. So we sit in the space that every agency needs a core system that runs all of their record management, client, caregivers, users, internal employees, as well as produces their scheduling, produces a app or a timekeeping system, generates payroll, handles all the billing, provides reporting, and then plugs into the various vendors in the home care space so you can optimize all the automation. So you can have training flowing in, you can have onboarding flowing in. So we call it an operating system. We are in the same space as a number of other competitors, about 70 in the space. I look at it like a top 5. We're in the top 5. There's WellSky, there's Access Care, there's ourselves, there's CareSmarts 360. So as you go out there and look, you are looking for something that's not just going to provide you scheduling, but it's going to provide you the whole ball of wax. It's to take a term from another industry, it's your point of sale machine. It is going to do everything for you.
That's awesome. And the last part there for point of sale, does that include, like lead management for leads that are coming into your agency and being able to manage that process as well?
That's correct. So you have the option of, if you select another vendor that you want to connect to, let's say you're going to use another provider and you want it to API connect or have some sort of file dump connect into the system, that's possible. Or you can utilize the tools we've prepared. So for startups, again, that's a heavy cost to pay someone for their recruiting or for clients or for caregivers. So a lot of them kind of grassroot it, and we have functionality in the system that allows them to utilize those different, a link that they can share, people can fill out an application, or a client survey flows into the system, and now they can go through the onboarding process. You can use electronic forms and such like that at no additional cost. So this allows them to get their feet under them until they get to a scalability point. They can bring on kind of an applicant tracking system.
Absolutely. And in this day and age, you would know way better than me. I don't think it's very difficult to not have a system for folks that are starting up. So usually the choice is because the complexities of scheduling and people management and lead management, that you almost always have to have some sort of system, and then the decision becomes which system right. is which is that. And I wanted to see if you could speak a little bit about the onboarding process. So if I'm a new home care owner and I got a million things going on and I know I need an operating system like SwyftOps, how does your team help to make sure there are 1,000 other things going on, but just to help to make sure that they do a successful implementation so they can get off and running?
Sure. So once they sign, we'll create their account within 48 hours. They get contacted by I call it the concierge, but we have someone that's an account manager, right? And they contact them and say, hey, thanks for joining us. Here's the next steps. And we lay it out for them, and they get an email. We walk them through how to log into the system. And for us, what we do in training is we do it a little differently right now. We provide live training, and we provide a calendar link, and we help them book these sessions. There's 4 sessions. They're an hour long each. We do them via Zoom, and that way they can go back and forth with us. And we record them and give them those recordings. So we get those booked out, help them like once a week is really, we try and keep them on track, and explain to them in a follow-up email and communication after the training, this is exactly what you need to do before your next training session to be on track. If you don't, we can adjust. It's okay. So they really control the pace. They can slow it down, they can push it forward. And on top of that, we're the only software in the industry space that has 24/7 live support. So that really helps to tell them, don't worry if you don't remember everything. If you try and get in here, just go to our live chat, just call us, email us. There's humans sitting there 24/7 just waiting to help you.
Nice.
And that really, really helps them. It's normally about a 30-day turnaround. Some have done it in 10 days or less, but most, like you said, are very busy. They're looking at all the things they have to get done. That 30-day time frame kind of calms them.
This episode is powered by the Business of Senior Care. The Business of Senior Care helps home care, home health, and hospice companies obtain their state home care license and accreditation through one-on-one consulting, fully customized policies, and years of expertise. To learn more, visit thebizofseniorcare.com. And now, back to our episode.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to just paint the picture there that you could help with, like, for how valuable the system like this is for SwyftOps. Like, if you're a caregiver and you're in the home, and you're starting your shift and you want to look at, the care plan for the client. I mean, can you talk a little about like when the rubber meets the road for a caregiver, what do they have access to, or what can they accomplish that in the olden days had to all be paper or had to all be reviewed ahead of time or something like that?
That's right, the binder. So the old days was the binder, and if someone doesn't update that or get that new copy in there, you're playing from yesterday's newspaper. So what we have is a caregiver app, and they are able to see their schedule as a variety of other things. But they can go in and take a look at the client. It's integrated with Google Maps, so they can get directions. We have a built-in messaging service, so if they need to message the office, it's HIPAA compliant. They can talk very quickly right through the app. They can see the tasks that they have to take care of, if there's times tied to it, or if it's a floating task, it's not required. It just needs to be done at some point during the week of visits or whatever it is. The clock in is real time, and it has geofencing. So it's EVV compliant, meaning time fraud is not possible. So they have to be at the location. It's going to pick up those coordinates. But what it really is doing for the caregiver is it's creating that electric timesheet, that time punch system for them. They don't have to record it by hand. They clock in, they go in, and then now they can go in and write electronic notes. They can mark off the different tasks. They can write a narrative. You also, in SwyftOps, you can allow them to see various documentation if you'd like. You can allow them to see the medications. You can allow them to see the different documents the client has. That's all permission-based. It's not all for one. So it gives them a lot of visibility in real time to what the client needs. And then from there, when they go to wrap up the shift, they can clock out. There's an option to turn on incident reporting, which is really nice, because now at the end of the shift, it can pop up. If there's something happened they need to report, it's very simple for them. It's, did something happen? Yes. Who was involved? Client. What happened? And this generates the incident reporting module in SwyftOps, as well as a lot of people use our survey function for change in condition. They create a change in condition survey for the end of each shift, and it tracks and has alerts. But on the caregiver end, it's so simple. You're just typing in information. It really gets, I don't want to say complex, but it gets to the multiple steps when it gets to the admins, where they're the ones that handle that. But for a caregiver, they're seeing their schedule. They can request shifts. They can see what they worked, what the hours were. They can request to work open shifts. They can submit their documents that are being tracked for compliance, license, required documents, whatever it is, right through the app. They can take images, send them through the app. So it is very, very powerful. And I always try and push folks, because you probably hear this a lot too. When you start working with people, my caregivers, they don't want to use an app. Okay, at some point, you have to drive your business the way it's going to go. You can't scale with people on paper. If you try and manage and get to a point where you want to be in a size of an agency, you can't have caregivers using paper. They have to be on this app. This app just makes it so much easier for your admin staff as well. So I always try and get people to just, let's use it. We have training for it. We actually support caregivers too. We're one of the only softwares that caregiver screws up the app. They don't know how to get into it. Whatever it is, they call us. They don't have to call you as the agency owner. Huge for startups, because they don't know it either, right?
That's amazing, that support. I mean, I've been in that scenario where caregivers who are the most wonderful, you have a caregiver who is the most wonderful person in the world,
yes,
would do anything for the clients, but they are allergic to technology. And,
that's right.
And
that's right.
The fact that you guys support that and help that, because getting everybody on board and getting it electronic, I 100% agree with you, streamlines the whole process.
What's really nice is that with that level of tech savviness, our system allows you to turn on functions based on that. So if you are non-tech savvy, I just say, hey, you know what? Let's make this easy. Clock in, clock out, and just mark off the tasks and write a narrative. Nothing else. It's super simple once you get it, because once you get the habit, it's easy. For those that are tech savvy, turn on the other features. Make it fun for them. Make it,
sure,
a valuable tool.
That's awesome. Talking about startups, I want to transition a little bit for folks that are in the startup stage.
Hmm.
And you guys work with a lot of folks that are getting started, and as well as existing. But for startups, what do you see? What are some common challenges that they have? Not necessarily related to working with you guys and getting onboarded there, but in the startup stage, there's so many things that entrepreneurs are working on and trying to get their home care agency started. What are some of the barriers or challenges that you see for these folks?
I think the biggest thing is what I call the whirlwind. They get sucked into this operational or overthinking whirlwind when their whole focus should be growth. So we see a lot of folks make mistakes of, I'm going to open my doors and all of a sudden I'm going to have 25 clients come in. And what we like to try and teach them as they go through any training with us as well is home care is very much built on relationships, right? It's a very different industry. You want to do the proper balance of building these relationships, focusing on operations, but constantly not letting that operational focus block you from growth. So they seem to they skip steps. I would say, I see this question a lot, or they ask us this, hey, what should my rate be? And immediately I think, why do you not know what your rate should be, right? So, we'll pause our training and say, hey, you need to go through an analysis of your area, of your competitors, of the services you're providing, of what your profit margin needs to be. And you can feel the kind of fear start to set in. That's probably number one. And the other thing is just not realizing they need to stand out in their recruiting. So, you have an agency across the street and I have an agency, and we're offering the same type of care. We're both very nice guys. Everyone loves us. Where's the caregiver going to go work? Well, everyone wants to say where they pay more. Well, yeah, maybe. But what if you advertise that you can pay them daily? Or what if you advertise you have incentives for punctuality or quality, or that you are going to incentivize them for doing additional duties like on-call, or outside of a certain range of miles, you'll pay them a differential, or short shifts, a differential. If you can advertise these things and then you across the street are just saying caregiver job for $20 an hour, this and that, I'm going to sound more attractive. And that I see that misstep a lot. So we try and help there. And then in client recruiting, I think they miss a lot in the terms of calling their competitors. They're in the same spot where they can't find enough caregivers and they might be getting a client overflow. And I have found this to be it's a competitive industry, but it's a friendly competitive industry because at the core of it, it's about taking care of people. And no one wants someone to go without care. And I find that these startups get surprised by how much they can become this little network with competitors and share overflow that they can't help. And it can get you off the ground, as well as those competitors surprisingly will share with you the trials and tribulations and the scars and scabs they had, so that the startup misses it. So those are very, very common missteps. Just utilizing low-hanging fruit that's right there for them.
I like that cooperation part, because a number of times there's opportunities. Like if you get a call as a new agency for a 12-hour a day or 24-hour client, and you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? But just what you're saying is so true. If rather than staying away from competition, if you're approaching them to develop relationships and you get a call for a 24-hour client and you can cooperate with another home care agency to say, hey, could you do the 12 nights if we do the 12 days? And then everybody wins. Like
everybody wins. That's right. And that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then they could call you and be like, hey, we don't have anybody for the weekend. You have care. Yeah. That cooperation part is a win-win for agencies that's not necessarily, you don't really necessarily think that when you would go into the business. And then to your earlier points, I couldn't agree more, in the startup, where you spend your time and developing relationships and trying to gain clients and hire caregivers is really the highest ROI. I mean, when we're working with clients and licensure and policy and procedures in whatever state they're in, we always tell them, if you had enough time, you could read the regulations, you could write policies, you could put together your application, you could work with the Department of Health. Like, it's not rocket science, but if you look at all of the 100 things that you need to be doing, and you look at what's the highest ROI for my business, what's the quickest way, the best way for me to start growing and scaling, it's not writing policies and reading regulations, and it's not trying to learn everything about an operating system. Like it's reaching out
Right.
to trusted partners to help to take those things off of your plate so that you can focus as much of your time as possible to scale your agency. And I think when clients that we work with, and maybe you have the same experience, once they can get there to that understanding and be like, okay, I can rely on these partners and vendors to help me so that I can I can exchange that time for growing my business, hiring, quality caregivers, differentiating myself in the marketplace. That's where that growth and scaling comes from.
Right. And I love to see when they do start engaging with potential clients, and I know that they see us as a trusted vendor when I can review support or see things come in where they say, hey, I might have X type of client. How do I build this in the system? I want to make sure I can bill it. And that's one of like the cardinal rules that we tell folks in the beginning too when we're training them. Do not take a client unless you know you can bill them or how to bill them. So that's very important when it comes to like VA or long-term care or Medicaid for sure. So folks that, you mentioned the paper thing earlier, like people need to get off paper, and it's happening more because of EVV. That is coming now. Medicaid has to have it, but just in terms of getting your reimbursement faster from VA or long-term care, it just makes sense to do this electronically these days. So that's big. I couldn't agree more. There's personally, so that I can relate. I've helped a lot of startups, but I've worked for a lot of startups as well, and SwyftOps was one. So when I came to SwyftOps, I left another startup from a different industry, and we started at ground zero. I was the first employee. So I have sat in the seat of sitting there thinking, uh-oh, what did I just do? How I have no clients. I have no policies. I have no procedures. And I get lost in the whirlwind, right? And I'm building out this great sales flow and this support flow. And then I'm like, okay, this is great, but no one's in it. How do I get it? So I've done the same thing. I won't say who they are, but there are competitors that I have friendly relationships with that we share referrals with each other. When we can't help each other, we just shoot each other a text and say, hey, here's the scenario. Can you help? I can't help them for whatever reason. And it's just a nice handoff for the person. We don't leave them in the cold. They leave us with a nice taste in their mouth because we didn't just say no. But yeah, I did the same thing. So that's exactly my advice is how I built SwyftOps.
Awesome. The last sort of thing I just want to get your thoughts on is as we look into next year to 2025. For the home care space, things are ever changing. What do you see are some current trends or up and coming trends for home care agencies in that space next year?
So I think in terms of softwares, you're going to see, it's already coming. The AI aspect is coming. Many of us have it. Some are branded right around it. And I think what we're going to see is some confusion there in terms of that it's going to begin running your system. In the end, the system is data in, data out. If you don't put the data in a good way, you're not going to get data out in a good way. So that's going to be a big focus, I think, right there. I also think that with the states regulating over Medicaid and such, now finally enforcing the Cures Act, which means that you have to have an EVV compliant system, which is what SwyftOps is. You're going to see more of a growth in terms of folks utilizing a system earlier than they would have in the first place. They're going to come through folks like yourself or even on their own, and they're going to realize that this is just a mandatory step, whereas before it was almost optional to do something like a SwyftOps or an Access Care or whatever it is until you were ready. You just cannot compete. And I also think that it's just going to keep growing. There's going to be more need for a system. There's going to be more need for complex billing scenarios. When I mean that, I mean split bill, split invoice, multiple payers, those type of situations. You do not want to do with a tenured system that can't handle those things or make you have multiple profiles. You want to make sure the system you have is on the cusp of technology that can handle these things in one profile, and that ease of use for you is there. So it shouldn't be complex for you. We don't expect you to be the tech savant, right? You just have to let us teach you how to use the different workflows you have. So my hope, obviously, is that we see a little decrease in that caregiver shortage. One of the things that I'm trying to do is just in the Kansas area, we're located in Kansas, is communicate across our state through a local affiliate on the news that there's jobs there. And in many cases, you do not need a quote unquote skill, right? You need to want to help people. Companions care, you can go through a training course in an agency about how to, what the policies are to fold the laundry, do the laundry, take them to the bathroom, make sure they brush their hair, all those different, ADLs or IADLs you're going to do in a day. But there's jobs there if you want to take care of people, and there's a shortage right now. So my hope is that increases, but you need software, in my opinion, to help your outreach, to get it out there more, to be able to manage that more, and to be in more places than you can just doing kind of a grassroots.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, awesome, sir. I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom and years of experience with myself and our audience. And I greatly appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thanks for the time. I really enjoyed it.
If you found this conversation valuable, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Also, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Business of Senior Care. We'll see you next time on Home Care. Doors open.